right, Brooke. Good afternoon. What's happening? How's it going?
All right, that's good. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Been on vacation the last couple of weeks up in lovely Maine, so I missed you, Conrad.
I missed you too. We spoke on the phone a few times, but that's not the same as this type of thing. We have a lot of fun doing this, obviously. So, a Maine summer, I know of it a little bit. Obviously, growing up in Western Massachusetts, I imagine kind of similar. But walk me through it. Is the weather nice and cool, and the sea breeze cooling you off a little bit? Is it exactly what I picture it to be?
It is, and it's hit or miss. I mean, but it's still definitely much cooler than Baltimore. August and July, so we usually go like last week in July, first week in August. We'll head up there for a couple weeks, and yeah, we're on. It's called Pemmican Point, so it's obviously a point, and you've got the cool waters, and it's like 74 degrees every day. You know, at night it's in the 50s, even 60s. Like you're wearing a sweatshirt and jeans. You go to these lobster co-ops every night. Usually it's BYOB, so you can bring a bottle of wine, bring a couple of drinks, and get lobsters for $12 a pound. So it's a nice life.
Yeah, I was going to say real quick. This is a very, very deep cut reference for me personally, but my grandmother, may she rest in peace, used to have a funny comic on her fridge growing up, and it was basically the premise was, two kids growing up in like Massachusetts, coastal Massachusetts or Maine. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, and it was honey, eat your lobster. We can't afford hamburger, which is just kind of a funny commentary on Maine lobster fishing, as it were.
Yes.
Very, very commodity product there, and we see it as a delicacy in many other parts of the country. So that made me think of that when you said $12 a pound. It's like some little kid right now is like forced to eat lobster tonight, because he's growing up in Maine.
Well, speaking of someone that is forced to eat lobster every day, that's a good segue to our next guest, right? I
That
don't know.
was
I was trying
better
to
than
figure out
I
how to
could have
segue
ever.
into that.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. I don't even know how I was going to back out of that, but I just want to tell a story about my grandma's random comics on her fridge. So, Brendan, welcome. Excited to have you. For those listening in that maybe don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background with Grand Welcome. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I know we've got a lot of mistakes to get through, but you're working on some new stuff, so we want to spend a few minutes on that before we get to the mistakes.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, I've been in vacation rentals now for, shoot, I'm going to age myself now, about 25 years. It's quite a while. Back in the early days when it was just greatrentals.com, if anyone remembers those guys, and all those rare vacationrentals.com, which I thought was a pretty good name. I don't know why that one didn't stick. It's kind of self-explanatory, right? But anyway, so we started back in those days just doing rentals only. I didn't do management. Back in the days where you can get 20% just for rentals. Didn't need to touch the property, which was the good old days. Um, I saw the writing on the wall that was going to end, so I transitioned into starting the first independent condo hotel management company in the country. Condo hotel is like mixed between a hotel room and a vacation rental, basically. So some of you probably know what it is. And just after, yeah, just before 2008, got into that, built it up into 5 locations around the country, sold it. I don't really see the growth there, which consequently I was right, but it still exists and it's just, still a good business. And I went straight into just traditional vacation management, um, managing doors and checking in guests and all that stuff. And I started in Mammoth Lakes, California, ran that for a number of years, knew I wanted to grow, and then landed up in about 6 locations, 6 or 7, had around 700-ish properties, fluctuated depending on the quarter, or the acquisitions coming in. And at that point, my goal was always to grow a sizable footprint, but the whole buy and build model, centralizing, we know really doesn't work. Vacasa, Resort Quest, Wyndham, etc. Um, and so I didn't know any other way to do it at the time. And so I started franchising, which seemed like the right way to do it. And it is actually, it did work really well. And built that up to do almost 100 locations in just under 5 years. One of the years was COVID, which was a toughie to start in. And sold last year to a private equity company. And consequently started a new venture with some partners called Stakeholders.
Right on.
Yeah. So Stakeholders, should I give an update now on keep
Yeah.
it rolling? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. What I was going to say, Brandon, is that like I've seen Brooke has kind of given me a high level overview of it. I've seen you guys post about it. I've seen some people on LinkedIn, like Lino, that I've connected with before, who are a part of it. But I'll be honest, I feel like I need like the elevator pitch. Like if we had 2 minutes together, how would you describe it? Of course, I want a more detailed explanation than that. But yeah, I'd just love to hear more about the business model and how it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the stakeholders VR came from me and my two partners starting Stakeholders, which is a small private equity shop. My two partners are Brady Stump and Joe Freeman, both industry veterans. And we wanted to start a business that helped the small business owner get a piece of this enormous private equity upside. Well, we all hear about private equity coming in and buying up stuff and this huge growth, and it's become, a huge part of the economy, private equity investment. But generally speaking, the small to medium sized business operator gets kind of the short end of the stick. And I've been there and my partners have been there. So we wanted to start up a shop that would give people more of a meaningful stake in the actual upside, the actual fund itself. And so we started that business and we were looking for industries to move into. And obviously, vacation rentals seemed the most logical. And we felt we could add the value, which we're now adding with Stakeholders VR. And really, what we've done is create a super group of top tier blue chip managers. They've all come together. Um, we're going to bring in a private equity partner that'll buy out a good chunk of the business, maybe 50%. All these managers get to take some chips off the table, but continue to run their operations and keep the brand and keep the legacy. And we don't get involved in the front end of the business. We just help on the back end with the things that they tell us they need help with, which is the important part. We don't want to mess up a good thing. And so that was the general concept. Seemed great. We launched it a few months ago, and really, it's going better than expected. Subscription for this business is almost complete. We've got a ton of private equity interest. The biggest investment bankers in the country. We just actually signed on today with a very large, prominent investment bank. And we're going to add a ton of value to these small to medium business owners and give them a heck of a lot more upside than I think they ever dreamed that they would achieve.
I love it. I love the concept. It's, as I see it, it's like you're locking arms together with all these, operators, and how can they get an outsized return that they couldn't independently?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's like, it's having someone on your side on the private equity side. Because generally, when you work with private equity, they're not on your side, they're on their side. And their side is to produce returns for their limited partners, for the people that give them money to invest. We don't have any limited partners and stakeholders, zero. We've taken no money. So we're not burdened by anyone. And
right.
all the upside can be given to the folks who, quite frankly, deserve it. The people who, or all, most of the upside that they retain will be given to the folks who built the value in the companies. And consequently, doesn't it make sense to give the most incentive to the people who can add the most value?
Of course.
Obviously, right? Limited partners that put money into private equity add no value besides a check they cut 2 years ago, right? Which doesn't help the business. So, so in essence, we're taking Wall Street, private equity Wall Street, and we're bringing it down to Main Street levels and allowing these folks to make the kind of money that private equity generally makes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It conceptually makes a lot of sense. And I think you obviously mentioned a few things where it's like we've tried the same thing over and over again now several times when we've seen the death of that model over and over again. So it's like someone's got to try something different, right? What's the Edison quote? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So this makes much more sense to me. Like obviously we'll see where this all ends up, but the pieces connect to my mind a lot better than just like, we're going to do it a little bit differently, but we're going to try the same thing that's tried a few times before. So
yeah.
Well,
I think you do have a good case study out there with Away Day. I mean, Away Day is a perfect example. I mean, they, I guess it was Trigueron where they bought Village Holdings or Village Realty in the beginning and, turned that into, a lot of money and a lot of management, a lot of different management companies. And that's been a success. You know what I mean? That is a perfect example. So it seems like that is more of your play. You notice what they did, though, where what Brandon said was he let those independent companies stay independent. They didn't strip away the brands. So I think that's a better example, versus the Vicassas and the Wyndhams and the Resort Quests.
Absolutely. There are a couple fundamental differences to us in Away Day and a few other folks. Is a large portion of the value that's being created will not land up in the property manager's hands. It's kind of a big deal, and a lot of them didn't even get a chance to roll forward equity into the deal, and the ones that did, it was very limited. So with our deal, the folks coming in are on an even playing field with everyone else, and they'll own a proportionate share of the business, and they will truly get a large share of the upside of the business. Not to mention the value that we can give these folks now, just on the front end. The first check they get cut right out the gate is a much higher valuation than really you're seeing anyone else offer.
Right.
And there's a couple of reasons for it. The main reason is we're not greedy. And me and my partners have done what probably, I haven't heard of any other private equity company doing this. We've capped how much we can make. We can only make a certain amount, period. And if we don't perform to the level we expect we can, we'll make even less than that, all the way to zero. So we're capped, and we could make zero, so we have to perform, right? So therefore, really, the bulk of the value is going to stay with the folks who deserve it the most, the people who actually put in the years and years of hard work to build up their little businesses, medium size in some cases, generally small businesses. And these are the folks that, in my opinion, deserve most of the value ultimately and the credit.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brooke. Yeah.
No, what I've seen, and historically with some of these roll ups is, again, it's that second bite, that third bite of the apple.
Yeah.
Usually ends up becoming worthwhile a heck of a lot more than the first bite. And like you said, Brandon, they're probably getting more on that first bite than they would independently. So really, it's all upside. And I know some of the obviously your partners in this, between Brady Stump and Lino. I mean, two stand-up guys who I've known for years. So it's kind of the all-star team, and I've heard some of the brands that are being part of this, and it's an elite crew. So I think I told Conrad before we came on air, I said I wish I still had my management company, because I'd be part of this for sure.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the brands coming on are the unbuyable companies, folks that have been offered to sell 1,000 times and they're not interested. And they're coming with us for all the reasons we've discussed. Brand autonomy, support, getting really what they're worth, not only now, but in the future. And so, yeah, we're getting a lot of companies. I think when folks see who's on board when the deal closes, I think the industry is going to be pretty blown away for all the right reasons. And honestly, all the credit goes right back to those people. These are the ones who put in the hard work, and these are the ones who deserve all the credit.
And part of your thesis is you want them to stay on part of this, right? You want them to continue to operate their business, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, of course. I mean, geez, who wouldn't want the people who create the value to stick around and create more of it? I mean, these are the best in the business, the very, very best that walk the planet today. These are the folks you want to have on board. You just got to incentivize them enough to want to stay on board and even be a part of something initially. Mm-hmm. And in our case, many of them will get 3, 4, 5, 600% more value in their pockets when the dust settles one day than they would today if they just sold. And that's not just good money, it's generational wealth that many of these folks are going to have created through this deal. As opposed to the big private equity guys who, last time I checked, are doing pretty well as it is. So, a couple $100 million less for them, I don't think they're going to miss it.
Yeah. Well, I like the concept, Brandon. I'm excited to learn more. And I feel like when I was doing some research, by the way, I couldn't find much about it. So I feel like even this last 10-minute snippet, people can listen to that and get almost a little preview of what you're doing, and obviously more to come. We're recording here August 2025. I feel like if we came back in August 2026, there'll be a lot more meat on the bone here and stuff that you could expand upon. So,
well, happy to keep you all up to date.
Excellent. Well, let's go into the mistakes just to kind of keep things moving and get through that, because I'm sure during this whole process, Brandon, of you initially scaling that kind of property management side of the business, going into franchising, and I imagine sitting in the seat that you sat in, CEO of a franchise company, you got to then see inside all the individual operators and how they were doing things and learn from their mistakes and be like, this person over here in this market did it the wrong way, but I'm going to save you, Mr. New Person or Mrs. New Person over here, from making that mistake as well. So maybe it's like you almost had a little version of Brooke's book, in your pocket while you were operating, Grand Welcome, previously. So if you're comfortable, we'll dive right in. Number one, undercapitalization, not having enough capital to cause a trickle down effect, and you felt that even until you exited the company. It definitely dramatically affects growth and the potential of the business, and ultimately personally financial, the outcome that you had. So obviously, it sounds like what you're doing now kind of ties back to this number one mistake that you had. But maybe give it a little bit more detail. Like, how did that work when you were in your business? Was the business doing well, and then you weren't doing well financially? Like, what'd you learn during that process?
Yeah, so I'm not a patient person at all. I think a lot of CEOs are not patient, right? And I like things to happen pretty quickly. So I didn't really spend my time on getting capital and putting a deck and bringing in partners. I just did it myself. So I got my business to a pretty large size. I was probably 14 or 15 acquisitions in, five or six company locations, and I hadn't taken on any money. It was all me. And I was recycling funds and I was borrowing money and I was doing everything I could. And that's a tough place to be, because what happens inevitably is cash will dry up at some point and you'll end up cutting deals that ordinarily you probably wouldn't have cut. And of course, it might slow down the growth. There's also opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brent. I think it's always a challenging position. Like, I have a very small, marketing agency in the grand scheme of things, and one of the main things on my EOS style scorecard that I have, Brandon, is just cash collected this week and then bank balances. I know it sounds like
Mhm.
very simple as far as the metric goes, but like those haven't let me down. I've been doing it now for 3 years, and I just look at how much money we collect this week and how much is in the bank account. And yes, I know I have accounts and accounting type systems I can refer to, but that's a pretty safe thing to know. Like, here's how much is in there, and here's how much I'm getting that month. So yeah.
Yeah, I always look at business as like a human body. Your cash is, say, the blood running through your body, and the
Mm.
profit, say, is the heart. And you need both. Like, both have to be strong. You can die from either one. You can have a really strong heart, and there's not enough blood, and you just die. Plenty of companies are profitable and just die. And you can also have companies that are not, vice versa, and also just don't make it. So it's all very important. But being capitalized adequately, I think, for any business is a very smart move. And I just wasn't, and I could have been more. In some cases, people don't know what they don't know. I kind of knew, but I'm not scared. I'm pretty confident in my abilities, but I certainly it would have been much better off if I did.
Brandon, knowing what you know now, like, and you were to start a new company from the ground up, management company, how would you do it? If you wanted to be, capitalized, would you just bring in just a partner? Would you bring in, would you go out and VC, private equity? I mean, I guess private equity isn't going to invest in a startup most likely in this, but where would
No.
you go to get that capital, and what would it look like?
Well, if I was going to if I wanted to start from scratch, there's two options. I'd acquire an existing company, put that deal together, make sure it has enough cash flow, and go from that point. If I was starting from zero, I wouldn't raise capital right out the gate. As long as you got enough capital to hire one or two people, you're fine. And really put a lot of time into understanding the market and the approach, and really getting your operational strategy teed up before you go out and get the money. Um, but it depends how fast you want to grow. If I just wanted to grow a business at, say, 20, 30% a year, I don't really need money. I know how to do that without taking on additional capital. But I was growing at hundreds of percent a year, an exceptionally fast rate. I mean, I grew my company from 2016 through 2018. I grew at 1,000% top line revenue. And so it was real tough. Just starting a regular management company, I really think you can do it without taking a lot of. I don't think you really have to raise capital. If you do it carefully and methodically, and you do it the right way, it'll take you a bit longer, but that extra time you'll maintain your entire ownership in your business, and you really will be debt free. So I think traditional PMs, I would say, try your best not to take on additional debt if you possibly can.
Yeah. I think, Brooke, we had an episode a while ago. I'm blanking on who it was. Maybe it was Jennifer Mucha, if memory serves. If that's not correct, then we'll have to go back and fact check me in the archives. But I think she mentioned that if you bring on the wrong partner too early, then it's like you're kind of married to that person and maybe it doesn't work out. So I think you got to be careful, right? If you end up kind of jumping in bed too early with the wrong person, sure, they're giving you some of that capital, but then it comes with strings attached, as it were, right? They got to be careful, in some
Yeah.
situations.
No, she talked about how that was you're absolutely right. It was Jen Mucha with Arrived, and how that was a mistake. Kind of partnering with the wrong equity partner, and how that really, and luckily she was at a point where she could buy them out, which really helped at that point. And I know now she just left some reviews on comparing software marketplace, and that was some of her cons with some of the companies that she did, uh, you know, formerly use as software. So, anyways,
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
Absolutely.
what's
Well, I think I reference it in some of my stuff that I sent off to you guys.
yeah,
There's no question. The wrong partner is a killer. It's poison. It's about the worst thing you can do. Business, personal, you name it. The wrong person will just take you down real quick.
yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought of it as like an anchor. Poison is another good one too, though, Brandon. Like an anchor tied to your foot, trying to swim, and they're just dragging you backwards.
Well,
Like I've seen that before for sure.
well, I mean, for those who are listening and you haven't had partners, think about a bad employee, what that's done to your company. It's terrible. It's destructive. It's bad it's everything about it's bad. One bad employee can destroy a company, can destroy a department.
Yep.
You can only imagine a bad partner is just an employee amplified by 100 times. It's really, really bad.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
that's a great segue to the next number two.
it really is actually perfect. So number two was hire a strong executive team. So maybe your mistake that you kind of outlined in your notes here was I didn't hire strong enough players quick enough to support the growth that I was bringing in my business. So how did you eventually find the right people on that side?
Um, Took a lot of time, a lot of mistakes, basically. I went a little too cheap initially. I should, at the rate that I was growing for the size of my business, I should have gone at a whole different level. For every dollar that I think I try to save on an employee's comp, I probably lost $10 in the field. I'd say that that's probably accurate, up to a point. Eventually, I got it right, but initially, I was buying when I first launched with acquiring companies for growth. Called it a buy and build strategy. First 3rd of January 2016, I had a CFO start and an operations guy start. That day they started, I'd closed on 3 deals, 3 acquisitions, 2 in Kona and 1 in Idaho. And it's a lot for anybody, but the guys that I hired just didn't have what it took. I mean, they were very helpful, and over time, they obviously helped. But yeah, I think it's you got to hire people that are commensurate to what you're trying to do. I'd say in the same token, don't waste money on people. There's no point in hiring people that are at a different level when you just don't need them. So it's a balance, but my balance was totally off. And it took me maybe 2 or 3 years, 4 years to get it right. And I can assure you the amount of dollars that I lost was infinitely more than what it simply would have cost just to pay for the right people up front, period. So,
Yeah,
no question
Jason
about
Jason Lemkin, who I follow on LinkedIn a lot, he's just spot on in everything he talks about. He's like, if you hire that A player, the difference between an A player and a B player, especially on your leadership team, they will pay for themselves. They are 100% accretive. So yes, sometimes to your point, Brandon, they seem like it's expensive, but the savings that they do, the extra revenue that they do, they will pay for themselves. But again, you got to find that person. But what you don't want to do is pay a salary to a B player, and that's the hard part is finding that A player.
it. Yeah, absolutely. Yep, totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. So number three is kind of related, Brandon, in your notes. Adequate infrastructure. So prior to the explosive growth, you mentioned this 1,000% gains. Depending on the measurement, have the infrastructure was not good enough. This caused problems in every single department, and that hurt some of the value or some of the growth opportunity in the company. So maybe define infrastructure for me a little bit better. Was that PMS? Was that like the way the teams were organized? Like walk through that a little bit
Yeah,
if you don't
for
mind.
me, it was a lot of stuff. The PMS was okay at the time. I was using Track, so I did foresee that, and for me at the time, it was okay. But it was really everything else. We were taking on multiple companies every quarter, basically, and organic growth. So guest services was brutal. I mean, it's tough anyway, but just trying to play catch up was extremely difficult. Owner growth, Brooke, your current world. Imagine trying to do that in 2, 3, 4 different locations every year without a proper infrastructure. It was every quarter it was terrible. Um, Finance. I mean, finance is a big one. Just cash recs. Try doing cash recs for one company. We all know how difficult it is. Now do it for 7 locations, and now start just throwing companies on top of that. So it was just across the board. Almost, I mean, 90% of my entire infrastructure was set up for a smaller company, almost at any moment of the day for the first, say, 4 years of my growth, which was a very difficult 4 years, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Now, was this when
Yeah.
you were independent, or was this when you moved over to, I guess, the franchise system?
This was independent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For franchise, we're actually quite well prepared for,
Yeah.
mostly speaking. There's a couple stories.
Of course, it's never always a smooth train track all the way.
There's a few stories, yeah.
I feel like, Brooke, we've talked about this idea before of like your company breaks at certain sizes. I know Ngadi's talked about this before. Maybe it was offline or maybe it was on the one that we had with him. But the idea that like, hey, the marketing team maybe works fine at 3 people or 5 people. That's not a big difference. But it breaks at 10 people or it breaks at 15 or it
Mm-hmm.
breaks at these different breakpoints. So I don't know, Brooke, have you kind of seen the same thing? You know, as maybe Brendan alludes to, like they got a lot bigger and it's like,
Yeah.
gosh, what we did before just doesn't work anymore.
No, there's a lot of things that break at different spots there, 100%. It's probably a good book there, you know what I mean? Or even just a really good blog that talks about what breaks and when at different sizes. And, you know, but you see it time and time again with different companies. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah, and very often most of the time, more is not better. You know, quality makes a big difference. Most of the really big companies out there that perform on a high level never have large groups of people in any of their departments. Small groups, always small groups. Very
Isn't it
important.
like the 2 pizza rule? Have you ever seen that one, Brandon, from Bezos? It's like
Bezos.
the team has to be fed by 2 pizzas, so that
Yeah,
limits the
I,
size
I,
of it
I
naturally.
would agree with that because then
Yeah.
it gets too unwieldy and you need systems to start managing people. The faster you can communicate, the faster you can transmit information from one person to the next and have something done about it, the better the results are. I mean, that's basic stuff, right? So you start adding 1, 2, 3 layers of people in a department. Just by default, everything slows down. So yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I think it's critical. That's really important.
I think it's interesting, Brandon, that you struggled in the early days with, you know, just doing it internally, organically, but then once I guess you expanded into the franchise model where you were launching dozens and dozens of new franchises every quarter, you know what I
Mm.
mean, where you got those systems in place. So what was it? Was it just time and you just learned the systems and you just built out that machine, or what? Why were you more successful on the scaling on the franchise side than you were organically just within your own company? If that makes sense.
No, I always knew the systems. By the time I started franchising, I was already in the business for 15 years, 16 years, successfully doing a great job with a pretty big company. So I knew all the systems. I understood exactly what they should be and how they should be. I just I wasn't patient enough to slow down to build them out and then expand. I'm not a patient person. One of the biggest, I think I mentioned in one of your bullet points, is something about that in there that I mentioned. And I'm just not a patient person. So, you know, and of course, I've accommodated some of those weaknesses now with my consequent businesses, and you know, those issues fortunately don't exist anymore. But I would just run at stuff and batten down the hatches and just try hire people to clean up the mess behind me, as opposed to having it set up correctly so there's not a lot of mess behind you. And that's just what I did. Um, for good or for bad, that's just how I did it.
Well, I can attest. I've seen Brandon's culture index profile. He is the least patient person I've ever met. I will second that.
Are we going to do like a drinking game, Brooke? Every time Brandon says he's not patient, you take a shot. We're going to have
Yes.
some
Yeah,
inebriated listeners.
yeah.
All right, we'll keep it going then. Kind of same thing, talking about people, but this was a different discussion point here. So number 4 is about hiring locally. So hiring locally dramatically diluted the quality of staff that I worked with. COVID accelerated this, or maybe made this quite evident. So I'm curious, like obviously some roles have to do locally. We can't get someone from the Philippines to clean a property that's in California, obviously. But what did you eventually do as far as finding better talent? Was it hiring remotely within the U.S.? Was it going internationally? What was kind of your experience there?
So I was talking more on a corporate level. Obviously, in the field, locally is the only way you can do it for most of the jobs out there: cleaning, maintenance, certain amount of guest services, owner relations, etc. Some stuff you can pull back though. But a lot of what I was doing was in the back end. It was a big corporate staff, and my pool to hire from was who's willing to drive 45 minutes to the office. And that's what it was. And I lived in an expensive area. So the cost of these people was higher. And then, so I got a pool of maybe 750,000 people to choose from. When you can go, COVID taught me this pretty well. When you can go nationwide, you've got a pool of over 300 million people. It's pretty straightforward math. Like, who's going to be better? If someone can do their job from anywhere and you can choose from anywhere in the country, um, there will absolutely be better people if you just cast the net wider. And as soon as I started doing that because of COVID, the quality of the folks that were working in my business just increased dramatically.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny because you hear a lot of these large tech companies now are forcing. I think who is it? Microsoft just today announced that they've forcing their employees to come back to the office, and Amazon has done that. A lot of these other ones, but I agree with you, Brandon. Like when I started Vintory, we are 100% remote. My talent pool opened up substantially. If I were to build this here in Baltimore, and one of the reasons why we are 100% remote was because I really wanted people, especially that initial team, that initial 10, that initial 20 employees, I wanted them to have vacational experience. And if I had to hire people who have vacational experience in Baltimore, there's like 5 to choose from. And that's it. So the talent, as Steve Trover says, it's not a talent pool, it's a talent puddle. And so by opening it up to being able to hire anyone remotely, I think more than offsets not interacting, together and in person. So I'm with you 100%.
And you can set up offsites, and with the amount of money you're saving on just everything, you can throw a bit of that cash into, hey folks, once or twice a year we'll get together and we'll do some stuff or whatever you want to do. And you can also do stuff like that. So it doesn't have to mean that you're totally hands off, but also driving to work, wasting that time in your day, being at work. We all know when you're at work. When I was running my business, and I don't mess around at all, I had times in the day I would just blow time because I was just like tired or didn't feel like something or whatever. I'd just waste some time. And that's just wasted time. Time you'll never get back. Going for lunch and then the cost of lunch and all this sort of stuff. So I think the cost of being in an office, both financially and time-wise, should be a major consideration that people should think about.
Yeah. I have a friend of a friend, if you will, Brooke, who I was talking to at a recent kind of get together, and he works at one of these very large companies who made him go back to the office. And he's like, I don't understand it. He's like, I think it's pure vanity because at one point we're doing meetings where we're on a Zoom room with people on the first floor and the fifth floor of this building. Like we're literally on the same building. We did like a Zoom call type thing. And he's like, what's the point of this? And his belief is that it was kind of vanity. Oh, we paid for this crazy expensive office here in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's millions of dollars. If it's empty, that looks bad for us and our investors and stuff like that. So we're going to force you to come in, and do this kind of stuff that he kind of found silly. So,
and I wonder how much talent they lost too. Back.
A lot, according to this person. But
most folks just don't think creatively about a lot of things, and they just listen to what the crowd is saying. They've had studies before where they've put 40 people in a room. 39 of them were paid for, and they showed like a triangle to 39 of them, and everyone says it's a square. This is a true story. Just go look it up. I'm not making this up. And the 40th person, who was just the person off the street, said like square. Why did they say it? Because they didn't want to seem wrong. They're like, what am I missing? Like everyone else said it. It has to be that way. And that's a crowd mentality. And we live in a different world, even from 20 years ago. This world's not the same as it was back then. So how can you expect the way people work and interact with each other to be the same? It doesn't make sense. Hence, what me and my partners are doing in private equity hasn't really been done before. It's brand new. And I have no doubt a large portion of private equity will eventually land up somewhere along the lines of what we're doing. It has to. There's no question about that. It's eventually going to start pushing in that direction at some point.
Yeah. I'll do a quick plug actually here, Brandon, for one of my favorite newsletters called Science Says. So it's just sciencesays.com. And that newsletter talks about these behavioral psychology studies like you're referencing and how you can use that in your own business and marketing and stuff like that. So to your point of if you convince enough people of a certain thing, they'll believe that, or they do a lot of studies around things like psychology and presentation of pricing or, how people react to certain news or copy or things like that. So I love that kind of stuff. If you go to that newsletter, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff. That's great.
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So awesome. Definitely was happier hiring from Nationwide. It worked for me. It's
Yeah,
great.
Brooke and I would have never connected if he didn't call a kid out of Myrtle Beach 5, 6 years ago, whatever the case may be, and
That's right.
have this conversation. I wasn't in Baltimore, so we would have
Yeah,
never been doing this if it wasn't for that. So
that's
I
right.
dig it.
That's
All
right.
right, so number 5, maybe you touched on this already. I don't know if there's a lot of additional detail here. Maybe it comes back to some of the other things you've already touched on. But number 5 was the wrong capital partner. So the capital partner that you did choose to work with previously did not have the constitution, love that word, to keep up with my growth and my business scale. It was the silent killer. So anything additional to kind of layer in on that relationship and how it went?
Well, we touched on not having the right partner.
Mhm.
A partner is such an important person. It's like it's everything. And the rate at which me and my partner were a total mismatch. But all he had was a checkbook. That was his contribution ultimately, because the rate at which I was growing the company and what I was doing needed someone who had a strong constitution to continually invest and reinvest in the company and take it to the next level. Granted, I took my company from 0 franchise locations to almost 100 through COVID in less than 5 years, and the revenue was enormous when I left. But still, this didn't seem to be good enough to get that person to look at it and say, "Wow, maybe this guy's onto something." And instead of investing, whatever the number was, let's get more, let's do more. They had no interest in bringing in additional partners, none, just total captive type situation. Um, and what a private equity partner will do is they will tie you up 6 ways from Sunday in the agreement you initially signed with them. Things you didn't even know you were being tied up with, because it's a 400-page document, $150,000 of expense might go into it. And they know exactly where all the triggers are. So they will direct you in the direction they want you to go in, subtly or not so subtle. And that's what's going to happen. And you're not going to fight them, because it becomes a really tough situation. And so for me, I would have been better just call it a day. It just wasn't there. Achieved some great things. The company still does well, but yeah,
Yeah.
there's no question. You need to be very careful of all that stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, number 6. We'll keep things going, kind of back to the property management layer here. So ignored established PMCs. I'm assuming meaning property management companies. Working with existing property management companies would have added stability to the franchise sooner. So when you were going through that franchise model, was it mostly through new folks entering the space for the first time? Was that kind of the
Yeah,
the model that you had
mostly.
explored?
I initially didn't
Yeah.
want to deal with existing PMs. My logic was, I was a new franchise also. Clearly had a lot to learn, but my logic was these folks are going to do it their way. They're not going to follow the system, and therefore there's going to be problems. Well, even the new folks we brought in wanted to do it their way. They didn't really want to follow the system. I mean, it's just like it's human nature, right? Give 1,000 people the same puzzle, and they'll put it together differently. And so we would have had a faster start if we would have brought in some existing PMs.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Schwab did that. It was a very smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Well,
gonna say I didn't know if that was an okay fourth wall to break, but yeah, like I've noticed that is something that they've done because I worked with a company that was previously independent and then they became a Casago franchise, and yeah, they kind of attached themselves and they've done quite well. So
Yeah. No, it definitely would have been because
it's
yeah.
it's sorry to interrupt. It's hard to launch. I mean, it like those like going from 0 to 1 or 0 to 10 is so hard. Nobody wants to be the guinea pig. Nobody wants to try it. Like I remember, even though we grew, relatively fast, that first year was so tough, like a lot harder than I thought. I just thought I could go out there, send some marketing, but the question everyone always asked was, well, how many properties do you have? Let me see your other properties. And then it's like, once you finally got to 10 properties, 20 properties, the next question they said, well, call me back when you get a property in my community or you get a property in my building. It's like, it was really, really hard. And
Tough.
I think that first year, I think we got 18 properties and I busted my tail to get those 18 properties. Trust me.
Yep.
And then I think once we got to like 30, then that flywheel started spinning. But man, that first year or two was so hard. So I can understand these franchises, like 0 to 1 is really hard.
Very hard. Getting the momentum is exceptionally difficult, exceptionally tough. But hey, hindsight's 2020. So if I started again today, I would do both. I'd go after new franchises and existing PMs. I wouldn't just do one or the other. I think a good mix. get the right people, get the best people, and wherever they'll end up coming from, then
Well,
that's where you should get them.
well,
Yeah.
Steve Trover did an interesting trick with one of the franchise companies, and he did, he's a big predictive index person, and he had them lay out. They didn't put their names on it, but they just did. He laid out everybody's predictive index profiles, and no names, no locations, anything else. And he just organized them from what he thought was best to worst, who would be the fastest and who would be growing and who would have the most properties under management to who'd have the least. And I think it was something like 15 or 20 different companies. It was the leaders and founders of it. He literally got all of them right except for two, which it should have been like 7 and 8 or something he swapped. But think about that. That just comes down to the profile of the person that's leading it, right? That hard charging trailblazer or captain or enterpriser or maverick. Those are the ones that are going to be successful in building this out. But I just thought it's interesting that probably would have been super valuable for you, Brandon, when you were signing up new franchisees to know that.
Yeah, we started using that, Brooke. You actually put me onto it.
Yep.
And I did use that. I used that for every franchise.
Did you really? Okay.
Yeah, no, we did. I used it for every hire, every franchise. We ran through this and saw what type of person they were. And we did walk away from many of them. It didn't look right. We just look, this isn't for you. And that was it. So, yeah, no, I appreciate it. Was good advice.
Yeah. I like that too, of on the franchise level, telling someone that they're not a good fit and saying, okay, as much as maybe I would want you to join this, I want you to be successful. And if it's not going to be successful, that's ultimately where you want to land. So I like that kind of.
From Brandon's perspective, right? I mean, yeah, you're going to get a check on them, the signing up the franchise and everything, but really where you're making your money is on that long continued growth, that franchise fee in perpetuity. And if they're not going to be successful, you don't want them on there because it's just going to be an anchor around you. And also you have, lots of docs you need to produce and show those stats on your success and failures. And having a bunch of franchisees that aren't successful does not help you in the long run.
Yeah. And there's also an ethical side to it. I've never looked at the money when I make a decision. I still don't. I look at the ethical side. And if ethically I think I should do something and I can add value to someone, I'll do it. And even when I didn't have any money, when I was just kind of a broke guy, relatively speaking, same thing. I just never made decisions based on the dollars. For whatever reason, I'm not sure. Maybe a few times I should have, because when you don't have any money, you maybe get a few extra dollars in the door. But I never did, and I just continued that process all the way through today. You can't add real value, or you think you're duping someone, or anything doesn't feel right, you should probably move on.
Yeah. I always say in my business, Brendan, win-win when we're offering marketing services. Like I have to win. Like it got to make sense for me in my business and how I'm charging and the time it's going to take my team and so on and so forth. And it's got to make sense for you. Like if it's not win-win, and most relationships are, by the way, all good relationships are, in my opinion, then let's do it. But if it's win-lose, like if I'm winning and you're losing, I don't like that. And I certainly don't like lose-win, the other way around either. That's not good. So,
well, business and life's tough enough as it is. And if on the onset of anything in particular, it doesn't seem right or it isn't right, you should definitely move on, because it's only going to get more difficult.
Yeah. Well, that dovetails nicely in number 7, talking about moving on. Maybe it's time occasionally to move on from team members. So you touched on it earlier, but this seems to be one of our greatest hits, Brooke, as we always talk about. But number 7 was holding on to some key team members too long. If someone's not working, cut them immediately, move on. Some situations didn't do it fast enough and it caused some damage. So, it's like ripping off that Band-Aid. It's that 36 hours of suck. What's kind of your experience here on this side, Brad?
I always remind myself when I'm considering moving away from someone and the decision gets tough, I just say, Brandon, remember all those times you moved away from someone and then when they left and you lifted up the hood and you could really see the damage they had done? Remember how that felt? And as soon as I remember how that feels, then I immediately cut the cord. Because if you think it's not good and you feel it's not good, man, when that person goes out the door and you see what's left behind, you're going to see a trail of destruction. Bar none. It's never failed me ever. It's always been bad. So yeah, I think in the early days I was under so much pressure and so much stress, and there was so much riding on every single decision and every day, and the money coming in and everything. I just thought to myself, how can I consider firing my CFO? Like, what am I going to do? It's just, I'm already 150% committed. I don't have any time in the day. My stress level is through the roof. And on top of that, I'm going to, the CFO's okay. They made a few mistakes. And what about this? And, you start making excuses for the reasons to keep them.
Nobody's perfect. I've said that one before I
Yeah, no
fired
one's
someone. Well, nobody's
perfect and
perfect.
this and that. And how am I going to deal with it? And so I think for that reason, and in some cases, maybe that's an okay thing for a brief period of time. But if someone's not good, you should be planning on getting rid of them immediately, as quick as you can. And I didn't in some cases, and there's no question about the damage that they caused.
Yeah.
And it wasn't arbitrary. I could absolutely pinpoint the damage, and I could probably put a number on it in many cases.
Yeah.
And I think you said this. You usually know pretty early on too. It's in the back of your mind, but like you said, you start making excuses for it. Here's the thing I found that very often helps me with that decision is most of the time it's actually it's better off for them too, because if they're not performing well here, you know what I mean. They're not performing well in your organization. It's just not the right role. So.
Yeah, that's very true. There's two sides to the equation, but I don't live other people's lives. I wish them all the best, but if I run a business and I've got 100 employees, I'm responsible for 100 families. And so if one person's going to cause a problem with that group, then I've got it. It's almost my fiduciary duty to step in and do something about it. I look at it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. I don't think we've ever heard this one yet. So number 8, didn't step aside as CEO soon enough. You specialize in that fast growth, like you said, getting new things, new concept, new ideas. Moving to the advisory role maybe a little bit early. Talk to me about that. That was something that maybe you considered.
Yeah. There's different people out there. A lot of people are doing EOS these days, which I think is great. It's half the people I speak to are doing EOS and traction, all that old stuff, that whole thing. And I did it too. And I always found a tough time placing myself in the org chart. CEO, I'd met CEOs. A lot of CEOs are good with repetitive stuff and moving things along with incremental growth and keeping things organized. And CFOs, everyone has a different skill set. I've always been very good at coming up with new ideas, new things, completely independent from anything else that's going on around me, and then really growing them super duper quick. And so I'm more on the visionary side of that scale, I guess. I hate to use that word. It seems like such a weird word, but like that's the word that's used in EOS, I guess. And I can do the CEO role for a period of time. But when you combine those two people into one, at a certain point, it doesn't work so well anymore. And so for me, I operate best in an environment where it's a ton of growth and fast moving and developing new things. This is where I operate best in. Brooke's seen some of my stuff, some of my stats, and he'll just tell you like that's me. And it reached a point with Grand Welcome, which on the positive side, I'd built a great business, which was stable, and it didn't need a lot of what I brought to the table anymore. What it needed was a steady Eddie CEO who does have a commercial side to them, wants to run the meetings, reports the KPIs, and have a lot of consistency and just smooth things out, right? And especially considering the type of partner I had, where the whole continual growth thing really was off the table at that point. So put the right partner in place, I would have still been the right CEO, right, for a period of time. But not the right partner, at least not the right match for me. On top of my skill set, time to go.
Yeah,
that's
so funny, Brandon. I actually feel that's very similar to me. I have what's I think I might have shared this before, but the entrepreneurial 5-year itch. It's like I launched new. If I look back at my career, I've started 4 or 5 different businesses. I really enjoy the startup phase. Like I enjoy the mess. I enjoy getting in there, learning about a new company, a new industry, a new vertical, and just learning and launching it and growing it. And I'm a high growth guy. Every business I've launched has had hockey stick like growth. But once it gets to a certain point, it kind of gets established. It gets kind of like, you get 40, 50, 100 employees. I actually, very similar to you, Brandon, I get bored. I need to start. That's why I started Comparent. You know what I mean? Vintory started really scaling, got it to 40, 50 employees. I launched Comparent because I enjoy that part of it. I enjoy the mess. I enjoy rolling up my sleeves and building that. And I'm sure at a certain point within 2 or 3 years, I'll probably get bored of Comparent and want to launch something new. So it's a character flaw, but I guess it's time to, like when do you bring in that next stage, CEO or operator?
Yeah, absolutely. I was approached with my private equity partner when I sold out, and he actually approached me, and he was like, "Look, he came he came across in a different way. I suppose he wanted to be more respectful to me, and as best as he could. I mean, private equity being respectful is like trying to dance with a porcupine. Like you just do your best. You know what I'm saying? It's a tough crowd. They have their duty to their investors. I get it, but it's a tough crowd, and so he came to me and he was like, "Hey, da, 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 and this and that." And he's talking, and I was like, "Love it." I was like, "We're, we're good. Let's work this thing out, and I'll do you one better. Let's call it a day. I'm happy to move on." Um, and so, yeah, you got to be. I think you're wasting your time if you're not doing what you should be doing.
Right.
In
And
your
what you're
heart
best
of
at, right?
everyone knows what they should be doing, I believe.
And
Yeah.
usually it's finding that alignment, right? What's the intersection of what you're really good at and what you really enjoy. And if you can find that,
Yes.
that's you're set.
And
1,000%.
honestly, I don't think anyone's going to be a good CEO if, back to your point, Brooke, if they do have that itch and they're not happy doing what they're doing, then they're not going to be a good CEO of the existing company. Maybe they got it to a certain level or a certain amount of revenue or whatever the case may be. But I've been inside of businesses before that clearly have an unhappy leader who is not doing something that maybe they want to be doing. And like, I think that starts to decline sometimes. So if someone's not happy, I think the best thing for them to do for themselves and the company is say, I want to do something different. I want to move on, find that person, and then go to the
Yeah,
next step. Yeah.
totally. I mean, and look, I'm turning 47 in a few days here, and I'm not like a spring chicken anymore. And even people who are younger, I don't think they realize how quick things go, how fast time travels by, and don't waste time. Just life's too short. Like, don't waste time. There's no reason. If you get to the point in your life where you're just watching the days tick by, that's not a good thing. From my perspective, you should definitely move on and do things that get you out of bed and you're pumped and excited and like you're enthusiastic. I mean, that's a big deal.
Well, that's a perfect segue to number 9.
Yeah, I was going to say number 9. I think we've covered it decently well at this point, but embracing your talent, kind of like what we just spoke about. Many people can run that steady business as opposed to that growth, thing. You're obviously that person, Brendan, who's embraced that growth, that fast growth, and you love it. But again, once you realize that partner, is maybe stifling the business growth, there's nothing that you can do about it. You should have left immediately. So it sounds like you landed in the right spot eventually, Brandon, but maybe it took longer than you anticipated. So it's kind of what we talked about in the last block, but I don't know if you want to add any other flavor or context in there.
No, I think there's a lot more to talk about. I'd highly recommend everyone just does a SWOT analysis on themselves. Just strengths, weaknesses, opportunities. I forget what's the last.
Threats.
Yeah, exactly. And do it. Like, figure out like what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, and make sure you stick to it. Like, when you make your decisions, don't be flexible on those things. Stick to it and make the decisions. I did that with my two partners with this business. When I first brought it up, they were like, "What the hell's he doing?" SWOT analysis with this serious, we're starting off this private equity. All right, guys, we're doing a SWOT analysis. And they were like, "What's going on here?" The time we're done, everyone was so engaged because you could see, wow, like, as a group, the three of us, there are certain things we absolutely don't want to do or touch. It's clear, there it is. So let's not do it. I tell you what, that one SWOT analysis got us to where we walked away from a deal, our first deal, which was not in vacation rentals. It was a very big opportunity in another industry. I don't want to mention names. Substantial opportunity. And we walked away from it because we did an analysis on what should we and should we not be doing. And so I can't recommend it enough. Like, it's like shooting a rifle, shooting a gun. If you're off slightly here, what do you think it's going to look like downrange? And so
Yeah.
make sure you're as accurate as you can be with what you have access to right here and right now, because if you don't do that, there can only be problems down the line, or certainly more challenges that you need to deal with.
Yeah. I've seen that one. I don't know if you've seen it before, Brandon, where it's like the pilot leaves Los Angeles and he's 2 degrees off and he's trying to go to Boston and he ends up in Miami or something because, over 3,000 miles, he gets so far
Yeah,
off the wrong
yeah,
track.
for sure.
That's
It's
how it can go.
things, life's tough and the things get thrown at you all the time. Don't add more aggravation to your life by doing things you shouldn't be doing or not focusing on things you should be doing, et cetera, et cetera. You know,
Yeah. So two more, Brandon, to bring us to a close here. Brooke's got one for you. I got one for you. So I know we're up against the time wise a little bit here. But number 10 was don't waste time on the undeserved. Don't spend time with people that simply don't deserve it. Definitely a novel one. But how do you decide who's worthy of the time and it's a good fit for and
if
not a good
people
fit
aren't
for?
adding value to your life or your business, you should cut them out as fast as you can. Consider them cancer and cut them out and never speak to them again. Period. End of story.
Fair enough.
That's it.
All right. That's it.
Because
Make it simple.
that's it. Because if you let those people in, everything else we just decided, you might as well just forget about all that. It doesn't matter. The wrong people in your life are absolutely just cut your legs from right under you and you won't even know it. It's like boiling a frog in hot water. That starts out cold and eventually before you know it, it's not good. So my very strong advice is, there's lots of people in the world. You don't have to be friends with everyone or communicate with everyone. Just pick the ones that are good for you.
Yeah, a good handful.
Yeah.
All right, Brooke. One more question I think you got for Brandon before we let him
Yes.
depart for the day. Yes,
Take it home. Well, Brandon, again, thanks for coming on here. As always, it's always good to see you. And but yeah, if you could go back in time and give your 25-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
I'd say that I'd say it's good that my main focus is always caring about people and their well-being, because that's always been an undertone my whole life. I've always really cared about. That's why I did franchising, to help lots of people. Maybe it's partly why I'm doing what I'm doing now and with vacation rentals again with my partners. I've always had a deep caring for people, to help people, certainly those who are willing to put the work in and want to be helped. And so that's been my undertone my whole life, through all the mistakes I've made and all the things I've done that I could have done better, and all these mistakes, these 10. I would say good job on always focusing on good people, and I've always done that, and I've built up very meaningful relationships that have stood the test of time. And yeah, so I feel great about that, and I wouldn't change anything. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been a great ride, and I've met incredible people, and I've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of people, and I've been helped by thousands of people, good people, and I want to just continue to do that for the rest of my career. So yeah.
I love that. It's great. If Brandon, if someone wants to get a hold of you for to learn more about Stakeholders VR, what's the best way?
Brandon, email me, brandon@stakeholders.us. You can go to stakeholdersvr.com and you can hit a little submission there to contact us. I'm on LinkedIn. Pretty easy to get hold of. Brandon Ezra.
Great.
Love it.
It looks like that.
Yeah, absolutely. For all those listening in and not seeing the picture, good looking guy. Good looking guy. You'll have no trouble hunting him down.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice.
All good. What we'll also do, by the way, Brandon, for folks in the listening in, there's some show notes in the podcast. So if you scroll down the show notes, I'll put a link to Brandon's LinkedIn profile. I'll put a link to the Stakeholders VR website, so you can click that if you're trying to hunt that down later, listening to the podcast, as it were. But I got one more thing, Brandon, before people depart. They have to help us out a little bit, and they have to go leave us a podcast review. So go to their podcast app of choice, iTunes, Spotify, click 5 stars. Takes them 5 seconds, but gets us some more downloads and some more people to hear these awesome messages. So thanks so much. We appreciate it, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode.